Hello, I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman, Chairman of the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee. The American Fire Service is rich in tradition and culture. A firefighter's life is filled with many emotional highs and lows. Stories of major fires, national disasters, medical calls, firehouse living, and family life are often verbally shared from one generation to another. Many times these stories are lost forever when a firefighter passes away. In an effort to preserve these stories, in 2019, the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee launched a new program of recording audio-video of our retirees' lives. These stories will be shared on our website, gfhbc.org. In 2020, we did not record because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please listen as these firefighters share their life experiences with all of us.
All right, I'm Stephen Curtis Gaulden. Will be 63 years old in about 3 weeks. Retired in 2014, so actually today is 9 years to the day that I retired. When I retired, I was a fire captain, also a fire investigator, shift investigator in the fire marshal's office. 32 years. I was raised in the Greensboro area, yes. I've kind of been in the McLeansville, Gibsonville area for most of my life though. I am related to Larry Gaulden. Larry was a driver for Greensboro for many years. He did retire. Yeah, he probably was a driving force in it. I always looked up to Larry. He was a good friend and he was a cousin, so he was a good close friend of mine. Still is. Before I got on the fire department, I was a welder for a heating and air conditioning company here in Greensboro. What brought me to the fire department, to be quite honest with you, was probably the 24/48 schedule. That seems selfish, but at the time, that's what I was looking at. I had no fire service experience at all when I came on, zero. So it was probably that. I had friends, Charlie Jones, Gary Chandler, that were friends that were on the fire department at the time. And they encouraged me and helped me along toward the process. Well, the application process, of course, was the starting thing for the hiring. Then I think we went through a written test, possibly, which had nothing, I don't think, to do with fire service. It was just, I guess, maybe to see if you could read. I honestly don't know what it was for. Then your physical agility test was pretty tough at the time. I know it's nothing like it is now, but at the time it was pretty tough. And then all the interview process and all that. And physicals and the whole 9 yards before you actually go on duty. Talked about that the other day. Yes, my starting salary with Greensboro was $868 a month. Oh yeah, I can name off several of the guys that I went through training with. Wayne Arnold, Jay Campbell, Wayne Henderson, Steve Zimmerman, Danny Lynch. There were a lot of people that I can still remember, yeah. We had funny stories while in training, yeah. There was one in particular that comes to mind. We were doing driver's training out the Coliseum parking lot. We had a guy in the class that was kind of on the edge of not making it versus making it. He was kind of walking that line. Well, they let him drive one of the pickup trucks out there. Of course, at the time, we all just hopped in the back and drove from the training center, out to the Coliseum. And he started acting up. Of course, the officers weren't there yet. The training officers weren't there. So he started acting up in the parking lot with a pickup truck and just put it in reverse and started ramming back as hard as he could go and ran right into a telephone pole right in the middle of the parking lot. Of all this whole empty parking lot, he hits the one pole that's right in the middle. The point that I probably realized that I was where I needed to be and it was something I really had a passion for was probably during training. I took the training very well. I finished at the top of my class, which I'm very proud of. I would say probably in the training process was where I really realized it was something I really had a passion to be doing. Larry was my first experience at firehouse existence, honestly. We were in training and they were doing the captain's test. And I got put at a station to fill in and ride trucks just in case we got a call at that time, you know. So they sent me to Station 9, which is now Station 49, and Larry was on the engine out there. And so that was my first experience at firehouse living. And I was always, you know, I was spoiled by my mama, so we always had meat and potatoes for lunch or dinner or whatever. And I get out there and he's having pinto beans and macaroni and cheese and greens and cornbread, and that was something I had never been exposed to. So Larry, you were my first experience at Firehouse Livings. I was initially assigned to Fire Station number 5 on West Friendly Avenue at the time, 1618 West Friendly. I was on Engine 5. Let's see, Richard Page was my captain. Roy Mark was my driver, and then Paul Miner, who went through training with me, was assigned on Engine 5 as well, and then Johnny Walker. Richard Page, probably one of the best people you ever meet. Super nice guy, and he was the same way as an officer. He never got out of sorts about anything. He'd pull up on a fire scene, and it was just like, you know, everything was just calm as everything when he was making his report. So, very good experience, very good. I really didn't have any nicknames. Richard Beeson tried to stick one on me right out of training. He tried to call me Conehead because I had this really nice hair and it, you know, kind of stood up a little tall on the top, but it never stuck. So I'll be honest, the guys, you know, Station 5 had a pretty remarkable name for the pranks and stuff, but I was never pranked really bad. I got short sheeted maybe one time and got salt, pepper, something in my bed one time, and that's about it. You know, of course, there's always stuff going on, stuff always funny, but anything that just comes to mind. You always have to clean the bathroom as a rookie, so that was probably the first thing was cleaning the bathrooms. And any other, at that time, whenever it was cooked, no matter whose cook day it was, the rookie always went to the store and bought the groceries and stuff. So that's probably a couple of things that stick out as a rookie. Is mess up going to the store. One time I had a wreck actually in the parking lot at Friendly Shopping Center, so yeah, I guess I did mess up. And did I buy anything wrong? Probably did, I don't know. If I did, they didn't rag me about it too hard, or I'd still remember it. Our guys always ate together at the fire station, and sometimes 3 meals a day. There were times that we would come in the mornings and we'd have a couple of guys that were going to fix breakfast even, and they would bring breakfast in. So a lot of times it was 3 meals a day, and as far as that's probably the most bonding part, in my opinion, of any firehouse is around the kitchen table. And, you know, you talk about family, you talk about fire calls, you talk about other incidents, you talk about just anything in general around the kitchen table that you may not talk about. It's the only place probably where everybody is always congregated together at the same time. The way it works at the fire station as far as meals go, you'll have one person that's usually assigned to cook. You take up a certain amount every day from each person, and it covers 2 meals most of the time. If you did a breakfast meal, normally it was something separate, but it would cover 2 meals, lunch and supper. And I think when I first started, we were paying $2 or $2.50. I think when I left even, it had only got up to like $6 a day for meals. You know, that's kind of hard to beat when you sit down most of the time to a hot meal every meal. So I think I was a good cook when I was there, yeah. My favorite meal was probably fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, homemade biscuits. So I think I was a decent cook, yeah. Learned well from my mom. I think when we came through, you know, of course, we had the dormitory where everybody slept in the same room. To me, that was probably the best of living times. You know, you go in there at nighttime and there's always something funny going on. There's always somebody, you know, ragging somebody else, somebody giving somebody a hard time. So I would have preferred that, as of course that's the way I was, you know, came through the department. With the cubicles they have now, I could see it being an advantage. As an officer and you got your own living space, it was always nice. So that part of it I could see being nice, but I think it probably does take away from the camaraderie of the guys kind of sitting around the bedroom with their feet propped up on the bed. You know, everybody watching the same thing on television instead of everybody watching something different in their own cubicle. I think the specialty behind the camaraderie is the fact that we share so much that other people in other parts of the world don't understand. You know, you see so much. And even today, you know, you try to explain it to a family member, or your wife, or kids. You can't explain the feeling that you get on any call, you know, whether it be a good call or whether it be a call where a child's been killed, you know, or injured or whatever. You know, you can't explain that feeling. I think that's something that as firefighters, we all share. It's all inside of us. You can't get it out. I mean, I couldn't even explain it to you, but you understand it, you know. So I got one that I'll probably carry forever. The call that sticks with me today even, and I had not been home but probably 5 years at the time. It was the Saturday after Thanksgiving, Saturday morning actually I think it was, or maybe it's Sunday morning. It was a weekend, I remember that. A call where three children were killed in the fire, and it actually was right up here right around in the UNCG area. And you know, it was a sad time. You know, it's something that I'll take with me forever. At that time, I had a 2-year-old son, so you know that kind of rung home to me too. I think the youngest of these three was maybe 3 years old. So it was a tough time. Well, I always felt like it was important for my family to be a part, because you know you're away so much. You're away, you know, 33% of your family time is spent away from your family. That's hard to imagine, but so I always thought it was important for a family to come around the fire station. My daughter was a firehouse brat. She still is today. Actually, she actually is working for one of the county stations now, so in part-time. So. You know, it's something that you know, as a family member, you can't explain the pride of jumping on the fire truck while they're standing there watching you pull out on a call. You know, it's just something that they experience. I think as a retiree visiting the fire station, which I don't very seldom go around anymore, but it's just I don't have the time, to be honest with you. But I think it is important for the guys at the stations to spend a little time. You know. Again, it goes back to the camaraderie of the job, and although things are different now than they were then, it's still, you're there for the same purpose, you know, and sharing that with you know, maybe some of the experiences that the young guys could share that may be different now versus the way it was 30 years ago, you know, and then for that person to share with the young guys and how it was then too. So my first call was probably 200 Spring Garden Street on a fire alarm. That was kind of the common thing back in the day. You rode over there 2-3 times a day when you're at Station 5. First fire, I think the first fire that I had was in actually Station 9's territory. We were second in engine company. We went in to do search and rescue. I can't remember the name of the street, but I do remember the fire. I think the value of the firefighters riding the medical calls is probably the quicker response than you'll get from EMS, probably for the public. As far as the value to the guys on the truck, it makes you feel like you've actually done something when you go in and help somebody. You know, you talk about good experiences. The good experiences I had probably were while I was on the squad, and you see some success in somebody either bringing somebody back from death, or you know, with CPR, or somebody coming around from a little dose of dextrose that's having an epileptic or a seizure of some type. You know, stuff like diabetic type deal, or something like that. See somebody be brought back around from something like that, and that probably is the good sign, the good things from the medical side of it, for the guys on the trucks anyway. So, the biggest one, of course, was Davie Street. The biggest fire was Davie Street fire that I had. That was one, you know, was one of those all-nighters, and probably back 2 or 3 days later too, still back over there. Definitely remember that one. That was some close calls that night. I spent 90% of my night on the top of truck 5. With the ladder pipe. So yeah, that was a long night.
Any more?
The first big fire that I had while I was there was right over here on Tate Street, right, probably 2 blocks up. And I remember pulling out of the station at 5, and the whole sky was lit up, so we knew we had one. I remember that. And then Richard Page, again, calm as he was, turned and said, "Well, boys, I think we got us one." So you know, so it was pretty nice. That was in the old open cab engine 5 too, so you know. On the open cab trucks that I started out on, you rode behind the driver and behind the captain, behind the officer, in a little jump seat that kind of faced backwards. It faced backwards in the truck, and so you couldn't see where you're going unless you turned around and looked where you're going. And I don't even think we had seat belts in the truck back then. So it was tough. You know, the hot days where you're sitting on the fire alarm out in the blazing heat, and you got turnout gear on, and you're sitting there waiting on somebody to release you, or the really cold days and nights that you would go out, it was tough. I can remember one night getting on the truck, and we just pulled out, and I looked over, and Johnny Walker was in the jump seat on the other side of me, and Johnny was a black guy, but he had white stuff just dripping off of him, just dripping off it. He'd been in the shower, and he got all soaked up, and he just ran out the door whenever the fire call came in, and didn't rinse anything off. He came in, and it was just like, and it was so cold, it was just freezing on his face. 9/11, of course, it was tough for all of us. I can remember exactly where I was. I can remember what was going on. Probably the first thing that came to mind at that time initially was just the fear, because you didn't know what was coming next, you know. but the feeling that you shared with other firefighters, that even firefighters in New York that were killed, and you've got no personal relationship with any of these guys, but you can just imagine the families and how that must have affected them, and I think it affected all of us. It was certainly nice, the aftermath of it, and what it did for the public, for the fire service and the police service, and the respect that we got at that time was certainly great. Was it worth what happened? Absolutely not. But that was a good thing that came from it, I think. I think people that I looked up to that come to mind probably the most. David Spears I always looked up to David. He was only like one class ahead of me in training, but it was always something special about David. You always knew he was going to do well. He was going to go far, and he just always seemed to do the right thing. It was just always, no matter what, he was always seemed to do the right thing and know exactly what to do. So I had a tremendous amount of respect for David. Probably the next person as far as a mentor, David Douglas, probably one of the best supervisors I ever worked for, one of the best. And I'll tell him that to his face. I totally think he was one of the best people I ever worked for. I always looked after his guys, and here's the thing with David: if you did wrong, you were going to pay for it. You're going to take your medicine. But if you did right, he was going to push you to the nth to make sure everybody knew that you did the right thing. So, I would say that the fire on Thanksgiving, right after Thanksgiving, was probably the most heartbreaking time that I ever spent with the 3 children, that had been killed. It was. I can remember doing, we were trying to save these kids. You're doing CPR on them, and I can just, the tears just flowing while I'm trying to work on this little girl. It was probably one of the most heart-rending things for me. I gave this a lot of thought. The proudest moment, I gave this a lot of thought. And aside from just accomplishing what I did through my career, I think my proudest moment was the day I walked out the door, and my love for the fire service never waned. Never. I never regretted what I did. I never regretted the time that what I regret most is I didn't stay a little longer, But I never had any bad feelings toward the fire service at all, or the Greensboro Fire Department at all, ever. So I think that's probably my proudest moment, was the fact that I was able to walk away with that intact. Oh, the things I miss around the fire, just being at the fire station. Every time I see a fire truck go down the road and I hear that siren wailing, I just, my chest just pumps up, and I'm thinking, yeah, that was nice. And my wife hates it. She said, "That's so loud." No, that's great. I think back in the day, coping with death on the job, I guess it was different. I know they always offer the peer support groups and all, and they always offer the debriefing and stuff. I don't know that I ever, maybe once or twice, I was involved in that. And I think everybody dealt with the death differently, whether it be a firefighter death or a citizen death. You dealt with it differently. You knew going in it was your job. You had to do everything that you could to try to save this person if there was any hope. Afterwards, I probably just kept it all inside, honestly. But again, some had to talk about it. If it happens where you have to talk about it, you've always got the guys at the station that would always listen to you. But it was tough dealing with it, and I guess everybody deals with it differently. My way was just to kind of keep it inside, probably. Dealing with the death of a firefighter, it's again, everybody deals with it differently. I guess the biggest thing is you want to support the family members. There's nothing you can do for the firefighter, of course. So you want to try to support the members of the family that are affected and give them everything that you possibly can offer, and just let them know that brotherhood is still there. That's about the best way that I know to deal with it and handle everything. As far as working with female firefighters, I did work with several, actually. I never had I've never been like prejudiced toward guys versus girls, never like that. So me coming in with these girls coming in on the job, they did their job, they did as best they could, just like any of the rest of us did. And I think I just respected that part, that they gave it, everything they could. I never had an issue with working with female firefighters, and did several times through the years, yes. Would I do it over again? Absolutely. Would I do anything different? Maybe try to push myself a little harder to be a better officer, and maybe advance more. But honestly, when I retired, I was happy with where I was, as far as what I was doing. Don't know that would have been a huge change for me. But what would I do more? What would I do different? I'd stay a little longer. When I left, I was still healthy. I was still in good shape, still in decent shape. But I think I would just stay longer. It's my regret, probably. Significant changes in the fire service from the time I started until the time I retired. Probably the most significant was probably the equipment upgrades and all that we had. You know, starting out on an open cab American LaFrance truck with nothing but a bubble gum light on the top, and that was all you had going in. I don't even know if we had air horns on the truck back then. I don't think we did. If we did, it was just the foot pedal kind. You know, we didn't have the Q4 sirens that put off so much noise that you hear now. So probably the equipment is probably the biggest change that I remember throughout my career. The changes now, I don't keep up with everything. My son-in-law is still at the fire department, so I keep up a little bit there. But I think the roles maybe a little different now. What I'm seeing, you know, like on social media and stuff, as far as what's different now, is I see a lot of the community stuff that they're doing now that we probably never did, you know, in the early stages of my career. You know, we were pretty much stuck around the fire station for the most part. These guys that get out and they do the putting the bedrooms together and stuff, and other things that they do out in the neighborhoods and in the communities, I think is a role change that is for the good to get involved. What would I consider a successful firefighter? I think one that takes pride in what he does. And one that, as far as an officer goes, in my opinion, the sign of a good officer or a good supervisor is somebody that leaves their men better than they are, no matter what. You know, I've taken probably every supervisory class in the books, but that's my opinion of what makes a good supervisor and what makes a good firefighter, actually. Oh yeah, family and faith's always been important to me. My family, like I said, they've always come around the fire stations. And my daughter, once she got her driver's license, she was there just about every afternoon after she got out of school. She would swing by and see me for a little while. So my faith, I've been in church my entire life. So yeah, faith and family are very important to me in that regard. Value in the interviews, I would say just getting different perspective from different guys, you know, and I've seen some of the guys that were on 20 years when I came on that are being interviewed, and you know, it's to look back and see how things were different then versus even when I came on 30, almost 40 years ago now, I guess. So, you know, I think just seeing the difference in the fire service and the way it's changed. Give it all you got. Give it all you got. If I was going to tell the rookies anything in training now, say give it everything you got. You know, always respect the guys around you, and you know, even though you may not care for them, there's always good in somebody that you see there, or somebody that you work with that's got something to offer. My legacy. What's my legacy? I don't know that I've got a legacy. I don't know what would I want the fire department to remember. Probably that I always respected the guys that I worked with. I always respected my supervisors. I always gave 100% no matter what. I was a hard worker, and I think that's probably what I would say I would want people to remember me by. My family, what I would like for them to remember is that I loved them unconditionally. And no matter how much I had to be away, it was for you. So that's it. To everybody that I ever worked with, I love you guys. Appreciate all the help I always got for everything that was offered. And you know, that's pretty much it.
In closing, the Greensboro Firefighters History Book Committee hopes you have gained a greater insight into the dangers, the challenges, and emotional events that have influenced and shaped the American firefighter.